Hello everyone, I'm back with another video for you today, and this time I've got a very special deck for you. This is the deck that I use to climb to infinite rank, with some slight adjustments at first. I wasn't running a card which we'll get to talking about soon in a sec here, and it was very successful. I had a very high win rate with it all throughout Pool 2, which is when I played it a lot, and I've been playing it now that I'm actually in Pool 3. Because I don't actually have access to Pool 3 cards right now because I can't open my collector caches on my account. They're bugged, which is really annoying, by the way, but that being said, I've just been playing this sort of Pool 2 deck in a Pool 3 environment against Galactus and Shuri decks and Red Skull and Patriot and Silver Surfer Cerebro, all this kind of crazy stuff, which even for a beginner deck is actually often winnable, which I've been finding very cool about this deck. The trick behind it, which is something we'll get to talking about, is instead of doing the typical zoo stuff that you want to do, as in playing a one cost on turn 1, playing another couple of one cost units, just playing on curve, playing very efficiently with your mana, instead of doing that, we're doing the complete opposite. We're actually not playing any of our 1-drops until turn 6 of the game in an ideal world. And this will allow us to manipulate the situations such that we often will not be in trouble from cards like Killmonger, which can otherwise be very nasty for a deck like this to deal with. So by basically giving the opponent the initiative, not playing all of our 1-drops until the very end of the game where we're acting second, and by just developing our other tools, then we're able to swarm the board and go crazy. So let's get into the cards and I'll explain how this works. So first up, let's go through the 1-drops. These are essentially your turn 6 play, counterintuitively in this deck. So the first of those is Ant-Man. Very straightforward. On turn 6, this guy is 4 strength for 1. Very, very strong. The next we have Squirrel Girl. This also is just an auto-include in Zoo because it's so strong with things like Khazar, Blue Marvel, of course. You can just swarm the board. We can get into those locations which are locked off from us as well. Very, very useful. We can fill it up for the things like the Ant-Man and stuff like that. So Squirrel Girl, very important for those endgame situations as well, to quickly swarm the board and take our opponent by surprise. Next we have Sunspot. This is a very important card. The reason being, it can act as a quasi 2-mana card and 3-mana card. For the situations where you actually don't draw your higher mana cost cards, the Sunspot is there to give you a backup plan and actually allow you to use that mana while still holding back most of your 1-drops for that turn 6 play. So Sunspot's very cool. He's the only 1-drop that I will ever really play unless there's a very specific location situation. Sunspot's the only 1-drop that I will play on turn 1, and I usually only will do that if I don't have a 2-mana card in my hand currently at that time. So hopefully that makes sense. Next we have Iron Fist. Now this might seem counterintuitive. Why are you running Iron Fist? I've heard so many people ask that question. The reason is simply we are playing our 1-cost cards on turn 6, and therefore Iron Fist, when he's played on turn 6, is actually quite a cheeky 1-drop, because he lets you take your other 1-drops and put them into locations that you otherwise wouldn't gain access to. You know, if you're locked off from the Vault or Kiln, or the opponent's played a Storm at some point in the game. All that stuff you can mitigate with Iron Fist and just sneak yourself across into a location. Actually a very cool card. He also has synergy with the next card on the list, which is Rocket Raccoon. This is one of the best 1-drops in the game in my opinion. You can play him on turn 6 so often for 4 points. More with Khazar, Blue Marvel, etc. But you play him in the row, you need those points where you think the opponent might also be contesting in round 6. Very nice card, and you can actually move him with Iron Fist if you want to, you know, get the reveal effect from a different lane and then transfer him over to the lane where you need those points the most. So Rocket Raccoon, really, really strong. Save it for turn 6. You better save him. Don't play him on turn 1. I'm watching you, okay? Don't you dare do that, okay? Next up, we have Blade. Blade, also just really a premium 1-mana cost card. 3 stats when we play him on turn 6. Don't play him earlier in the game, guys. That would be a mistake. You'd be discarding a card. Not good. Not a good idea. he'd be vulnerable to Killmonger. Wait for him to be played on turn 6 for a nice 3, I mean it ends up being 5 points for 1 mana with this Khazar Blue Marvel on board, which we'll get to, okay? Really, really good. Okay, now we're on to the 2 mana cost cards. These are the cards you want to be playing early game, unlike your 1-drops, okay? Turn 1 we're passing most of the time, turn 2 we're developing one of these 2-drops. First we have Angela. Angela is a really nice 2-drop. You want to play it in a location where you don't have any units there, you've got a lot of space available. When you play your other cards, you'll need to think about Angela and think about, okay, where am I going to keep open for my Angela to get its full 6 value in this situation. Really, really good 2-drop. 6 points is insanely strong. Puts you, gets you going on the front foot in the game, which is really good. Next up, we have Okoye. This card is pretty nice. It's actually a pretty recent inclusion in the deck for me. You could replace her with Scorpion as well if you wanted to be more disrupting what the opponent's doing, as opposed to just buffing up your deck. But she is there as the best on turn 2 play. If you have her in hand, you throw her out, you juice up the deck with some nice extra points that will help you finish the game out. If you don't get her early on in the game, quite often you don't really need to play her, she won't be very useful. So she's just there as another very nice early game play to have. I was even experimenting with just running another 1-cost card, so you have an even more explosive turn 6. You can definitely consider that. Things like Uatu would be okay. Things like Nightcrawler, maybe you could consider Electra. If you have Arrow, that's a good card. But anyway, I'll get to the card substitutions in a little bit, so let's focus and now go to Bishop, the star of the deck, arguably. Kind of the reason I wanted to play this version of the deck in the first place. The idea being turn 2 Angela, turn 3 Bishop, then we've got all of the 1-drops in our hand, ready to buff Bishop up on turn 6. That's just going to be incredible. A lot of games, so you want to get Bishop down on turn 3 if you can. If you don't get him on turn 3, sometimes you won't play him because he won't be worth enough points to be viable. Other times you might. It just depends on the situation, but turn 3, get Bishop on the board. Insanely good. Next up we have Maximus. Now this is a pool 3 card, so I'm aware some of you won't have access to it if you're new to the game and starting out. When I played this deck originally, I didn't have Maximus in it. I was actually running Scorpion and another 1-drop. But yeah, I'll get to the substitutions in a sec, okay? But just know that you can play this deck without Maximus and it will still do very well. In fact, Maximus is... I mean, it's a very good card, don't get me wrong. You can use it late game with a couple of 1-drops to do really explosive point swings that don't seem possible. The opponent's probably not going to be considering that you have a Maximus in your deck, because often Zoo decks don't play just such a pure point slam card, right? So it's very cheeky in the late game situations, and it's a very good card to play on turn 3 if you don't have Bishop, and even on turn 4 if you don't draw your Khazar, and all of that. So it's just a very reliable point generator, and a really good card overall. Let's move on now to Khazar. This is of course very important for our deck because we are running a wide strategy with lots of 1-drops. So he's often going to be buffing 4, 5, maybe even 6 1-drops, getting a huge value, of course. Very important card. Not much more to say. You want to play him on turn 4 when you get him, ideally. Maybe turn 5 if you don't have Blue Marvel. And he's going to help your whole board become a lot stronger. And finally we have that Blue Marvel, which is going to be useful for just buffing everything up. Really powerful card. You want to slam him on turn 5 when you draw him. Some games you might have him on turn 6, but it might be better to actually just play all of your 1-drops, for example if you drew into him. And sometimes you may, if you don't draw Blue Marvel and Khazar, and wonky things happen in the game, you may decide that you actually have to start playing your 1-drops earlier than round 6 in order just to maximize your points. But generally when doing that, you should probably only do that if you really know that the opponent's most likely not running Killmonger. If you play all of your 1-drops into Killmonger, you're going to lose the game most of the time. So just keep that in mind, but keep in mind that Blue Marvel you want to play on turn 5 in an ideal situation. So that's really all I've got to say about the cards in the deck. I really love this style where you can play all of your 1s on turn 6 as opposed to playing them throughout the game. It leads to really explosive power bursts and just surprise factor, the opponent not knowing where to put their cards, not knowing how to deal with how many points you're going to have. They have no idea. How do you calculate Bishop on the board, Khazar, Blue Marvel. How many 1-drops do they have? I don't know. Do they have Angela? Maybe they have Angela. Could they have a Maximus coming in? There's a Sunspot on the board. Do they need to consider that? There's just huge potential in this list. It can really beat a lot of the high tier decks if you play it well. Some of them might give you trouble, like Shuri decks, for example. It's gonna be a tough one. You might have to just retreat once you see Shuri, or you see signs that they're playing that, and find a better fight elsewhere. But a lot of other decks, this deck will perform very decently against. So that being said, guys, let's talk a little bit about the card substitutions. As I mentioned already, Maximus can be substituted for a manner of different cards. You could go Captain America. That's an okay if you wanted something that basically fills the same role exactly as Maximus while being a little bit worse. I'd probably just consider running another 1-drop. You know, things like Elektra, things like potentially Uatu, or Aero if you have it. Aero would be a brilliant 1-drop to include in general. I'd put that card in this deck if you have it, because you can just throw out another one of these 1 mana 3 strength cards on the 6th turn. Insane point swings are possible. Other than that, guys, and Scorpion, which is the other 2-drop that you could include, I don't think I would recommend changing too much more about this deck. You should have access to most of the cards. You could theoretically get rid of Sunspot if you don't have it. Can't say I'd recommend it. He does give you a little bit nice, a bit more of a nice backbone to the deck for when you do not draw your great cards for the early game, but you know, you could think about getting rid of Sunspot theoretically, and I wouldn't hate it because it would give you more power for the final turn of the game where you have those powerful 1-drops. So with that being said, guys, let's just jump into some games and I can show you a little bit of how this deck plays. Okay guys, let's jump into our first game, shall we? So, as I already said, with this deck, generally speaking, we do not want to play cards early on in the game. That being said, there's a Gamma Lab here, which might change things up a little bit. I guess we can play Iron Fist as a result of this location. Don't really like seeing this, because if there's a Shang-Chi involved, then you kind of end up just feeding all of your cards into a Shang-Chi and losing that location for free, so a bit of a nasty one for us to have to contend with. I probably will go ahead and Squirrel Girl here, but not Blade. I'll hold on to Blade for the later portion of the game, and we'll see if the opponent chooses to play any more into this. There might be a Storm possibly being played if the Sunspot could be any indication. Maybe not. Maybe not going to happen. And we'll see if we want to go with another 1-drop here, or if we'd perhaps prefer to just chill. I think I will play the Bishop. It's going to have to be a Gamma Lab game, so not going to be too many takeaways here. Okay, I'm actually getting the Storm. That's kind of something we could have anticipated and perhaps did, but here I think I'm kind of just hoping that Khazar will be enough to take it. It's a nice 6-drop, so we've kind of got 7 points here. The Blue Marvel will add to that, of course, a bit later on. I think our cards in this zone are not too shabby, and we got the Squirrel Girl value as well. Okay, there is a Goose. That works out quite nicely for us. Lizard, of course, getting a buff. Now, we're in a position which is a little bit sketchy, a little dangerous, because they have the Sunspot, which can be buffed, but since we're already quite a bit ahead with the Bishop value, of course, in the left, I think I'm going to go ahead and snap here. We are going to be able to move a location with Strange Academy. Doesn't really matter too much, of course. I will just play Blue Marvel over here to get the buff from the Nidavellir. But this is looking quite nice for us. We can finish up with just Angela, Blade, Maximus if we don't draw anything better, which is a really solid amount of points on the last turn, wherever we choose to dump those. Okay, the Kingpin has been played, so that will actually potentially deal some damage to us with something like a Magneto or some kind of card like that. It's a little bit concerning. Yeah, could be a Magneto coming. I would imagine that's the card. Probably going to drag our Khazar and destroy it. So, provided we play something in the right, then that's not really going to be an issue for us. Probably just, yeah, we can easily play around that, so the opponent's going to go ahead and retreat. And we locked in 1 extra cube from the earliest snap after the flooded location was not too bad for us. So I'll collect a couple of cubes, Not too bad. Let's jump into the next game. Okay, now we're going up against Cobb. We'll see how he can do. See if he fares better into our deck. So we don't have a 2-drop, which means we're actually okay to play Sunspot. If you don't have a 2-drop in hand, you want the Sunspot on the board. He kind of acts as a 2-drop. He's vulnerable to Killmonger and Electro and that kind of stuff, but he will at least get you the value if you do not draw a card, as we do not here. So we take a pass, get the Sunspot value, perfect. And then it's going to be Maximus unless we draw into Bishop, most likely. We actually get 1 extra mana, which is kind of interesting. Just gives us our Sunspot a bit of extra juice. I will play in this row where the Nova is, hopefully contest that. You imagine there could very well be a Killmonger coming, so let's not worry too much about that Sunspot getting value. It might end up not being worth very much at all a bit later on. They're going to storm here. Shouldn't be too bad for us in general. We can go ahead and play the Maximus now in the flooding area. I might even go ahead and do a cheeky snap, although it's maybe a bit too soon to go for that. We might be running into, yeah, probably Silver Surfer here, you would imagine, would be the card that they're going to go for. So that'll be a little bit tricky for us, certainly. I'm going to try to split my strength up. We probably need to win something that's not the middle in order to win the game. In fact, perhaps we should go on the right. I'm just a little bit afraid of having priority here. We might even have to retreat, because Killmonger is a distinct possibility. We can go Blue Marvel on the right because Bishop is actually kind of quite strong, and it counteracts the negative effect of having a Blue Marvel, which is a weaker card on that row. Interestingly, we have Iron Fist, so potentially here, if we aren't worried about double Silver Surfer, then we could perhaps consider moving a unit across, as well as going for the Squirrel Girl value. Might theoretically be enough. The only issue is we are going first, unfortunately, so that's going to give... Yeah, I don't think we can play this one out. We're just going to have to retreat because of Killmonger. We're not in a position, really, unfortunately, to deal with that. I can always click retreat later and see if they will also retreat, because you never know. But probably we end up losing. Okay, not the end of the world. A little bit tricky, that particular game, having to play the Sunspot, not getting a 2-drop, and then of course the threat of Killmonger, very, very distinct. Let's jump into one more, shall we? Okay, we found another game here. Ooh, it's going to be an Elysium game with Okoye on turn 1. That is quite interesting. I think I'll just play it here. I don't really want to get myself involved in any special locations. And we're going to be up against Thanos. Going to be up against the Thanos aggro deck, I guess you could call it, swarm deck. Lots of stones here doing different things. This one gives him energy. This one is giving me less power, and this one is changing the location, which is now a Morag. Can't play our first card there each turn. That's a bit scary. I'll play my Maximus. Maybe I won't. I think I'll hold it for now because Elysium is a thing, and giving them cards is probably not a great idea. Okay, Carnage coming in for a lot of points. Mojo. This could be quite strong in this particular game against me. Alright, I'm going to get Khazar down in the mirror dimension. I want a card there in case it ends up being another Morag. And they've got plenty of cards still, so let's not get too crazy. Not going to snap yet. Just going to be an Ant-Man. Okay, there is another Morag. Oh god. This should be quite an interesting game. I'm still going to hold out on the Maximus. We're going to need space in order to actually play our cards onto the other locations. So I'll just end my turn now. Floating a lot of mana. The blue marble comes for the opponent. That's definitely a good one. I'd love to see mine. Oh, there he is. I'll play my blue marble now. I'm feeling pretty confident that we can win this game. I actually have more cards in hand right now, and I see where my opponent's strength is, so that's pretty good advantage to be having. Mojo is a bit scary. The Carnage value is also a bit scary, so I'll hold back. Let's see one more turn and see what they've got and whether we can beat it easily. Oh, okay, Bishop Angela. Okay, we've set ourselves up quite nicely here, haven't we? Look at that. What a powerful final turn for us here. They've only got 3 cards. I'm going to snap for sure. The opponent's going to retreat. Alright, we don't get the win. I maybe could have snapped a turn earlier there when I drew my blue marvel. That might have been the correct play. But okay, a win is a win. Let's jump into another. Okay, one more game. Oh, beautiful. We have Okoye again. I love it. Having Okoye on hand is so nice. Let's see what locations we get. Nothing too spicy. I guess I'll just go on the left. Generally care least about the left, because movement decks can go there, and it's just kind of whatever. I could take the risk and jump into the right lane, but I think I'm okay. Alright, so we've got Shadowland. It's kind of whatever. It's fine. It doesn't matter too much. Probably good to just play Maximus here and maximize our value. I'll play it in this location since we have less units here. We're going to need a larger amount of strength to do well in that lane. And we've got more ninjas popping out. Okay, this looks really good for me, honestly. It might seem a bit weird that it looks good, but we have Khazar, we have Blue Marvel, and we have a perfect, probably, curve of Angela and 3 1-drops for turn 6. So I'm going to snap. I'm going to snap here. I think I'm feeling pretty good about the situation. We will see. We don't know exactly what the opponent's playing, so there might be something nasty that counters us even, perhaps. Something like Shuri. I'm not sure. But we hope not. We hope it won't be Shuri. Okay, just going to be She-Hulk. I mean, that's pretty strong, but it's not anything to worry about too much. I am quite worried about Wave, actually. They could be playing a Wave in a sec. You know what? This might be a game where I break my own rules, guys. I might break my own rules and play around Wave. Because if they have She-Hulk, it's kind of possible they would have a Wave, isn't it? And also in some way we can play around Leader turn 6, which, you know, it's kind of always a good idea if you have the option to. Yeah, let's just get some nice value here. Probably play Ant-Man over in this location. Maybe not. I suppose we can use the strength in this row. Yeah, let's go for this. Obviously Killmonger would really hurt us, but I think we should be fine here. Kind of not feeling like a Killmonger is on the cards. If it is, then we'll just have a measly Angela protecting the row, although it is good enough on its own, provided they don't play another, you know, threat. Just finish it off with another 1-drop. Let's see what they've got here. We've managed to output a fair number of points. I probably should actually have even taken the extra value on Sunspot there. That may have been a slight mistake. I'm not sure it will really matter, but we could have basically held onto the Iron Fist and instead played Blue Marvel only and got the 1 value on Sunspot. Might be a bit counterintuitive, but if we value the strength more in the middle, then that could have been an idea. So we'll see if these big fellas have what it takes to beat me here. The Skull She-Hulk's pretty interesting. Seems like maybe an overcommitment to the left lane from the opponent. That being said, we probably would be able to win this without anything other than She-Hulk. Of course, we're also buffing the ninjas, which is very good for us. Those locations are actually quite good for our deck. Okay, we get another win. Not getting a huge amount of cubes. Of course, when we're able to play all of the 1-drops on the turn 6, I played around Wave this game because I was kind of anticipating maybe a Wave turn 5 from the opponent. Didn't end up happening. It was Red Skull, of course, but if it had been Wave, then we would be in a better spot, and it seemed like probably no Killmonger. Sometimes just making that cool. But anyway, outro time, okay? That's all I've got for you today, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Do subscribe if you want to see more videos of mine, and check out my Twitch stream if you'd like to see this deck and others in action or catch any of the VODs to get some more gameplay experience and that kind of thing, you can do that all on my Twitch channel, Freddy Babes. Of course, with that being said, thanks a lot for watching again, guys. Have a good one, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.